Hello, my name is Emily and I am 28 years old. I've been married to my husband Mark for the past 3 years. We are currently expecting our first child, which has been an incredibly exciting and transformative time for us. We live in a cozy little house in a middle-class neighborhood, and up until recently, I was working as a marketing executive, a job I was truly passionate about. My role was fast-paced, creative, and challenging, which suited my personality perfectly. However, when I found out I was pregnant, Mark and I decided it would be best for me to take a break from work to focus on my pregnancy and prepare for our baby. Mark has been supportive of this decision, or at least that's what he says. He's an accountant with a stable job, and he stepped up to be the primary breadwinner without complaint. But despite his outward support, I can't help but feel like he started to see me differently since I stopped working. Sometimes, I get the sense that he's beginning to adopt some of his mother's old-fashioned ideas about traditional gender roles, which worries me. Mark's mother, Sarah, is quite a character. She's in her late 50s with a sharp tongue and a lot of unsolicited opinions. She's always had an issue with me, although she tries to mask it with a fake smile and supposedly concerned advice. Sarah firmly believes that women should be submissive and dependent on their husbands, which I find absurd. Mark, having been raised by her, has always been close to his mom and tends to listen to her more than anyone else. I've tried talking to him about how his mother's views and behavior make me feel, but he just brushes it off, telling me that I'm overthinking things. Maybe I am, but it's hard to ignore when Sarah is constantly around, pushing her outdated views on us. Thankfully, I have my best friend, Linda, who has been my rock through all of this. Linda is a lawyer, sharp, independent, and always ready to offer sound advice. Her support has been invaluable, especially since things with Sarah have become increasingly tense lately. On the surface, everything seems normal. I spend most of my days preparing the nursery, making sure everything is perfect for the baby. I want our child to be born into a loving, warm home, despite the growing tension around us. I've been reflecting a lot on my career lately, thinking about how much I miss it and how I worry that Sarah now sees me as useless because I'm staying at home. One afternoon, I was at home, folding laundry in the living room. It was one of those rare, quiet moments where the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. I was trying to distract myself from the anxiety I felt about Sarah's upcoming visit. She never announces when she'll come over, but she always has a critique ready. Sure enough, the doorbell rang and there she was, her eyes scanning the room as if she were searching for something to criticize. "Emily, it's a shame to see you like this, just wasting away at home," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. I tried to keep my voice calm as I replied, "Sarah, I'm pregnant, not incapacitated, and I'm only taking a break from work." "But you're not contributing, are you?" she shot back. "My son is the one bringing in all the money. What do you do all day?" I bit my tongue, trying to keep from saying something I might regret. My hands tightened around a folded shirt as I said, "I'm preparing for your grandchild, Sarah." "That's hardly doing nothing," she scoffed, the sound feeling like a slap to the face. "Preparing? Looks more like you're lounging around. Mark works all day, and you're just spending his money." Before I could respond, she stormed upstairs. I could hear drawers being yanked open and closet doors slamming. My heart raced as I followed her, only to find her throwing my clothes out of the window onto the lawn below. "My son's a breadwinner." "You're useless," she yelled, tossing out another handful of my belongings. I stood there, speechless and shaking, as she pushed past me, her mission apparently complete. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving a ringing silence in the house. When Mark came home, he found my clothes scattered across the grass. I was still trying to process everything, struggling to find the words to explain when he walked up with a frown. "Emily, why is all your stuff outside?" he asked. "Your mother," I managed to say, my voice choked with emotion. "She thinks I'm useless." Mark sighed deeply, a sound that felt dismissive and weary. "Look, Emily, Mom can be a bit much, but you have to admit you've been home a lot. Maybe try to see things from her perspective. The hurt his words caused was unlike anything I'd felt before. From her perspective, Mark, she threw my clothes outside. How is that acceptable? He was already shaking his head, ready to dismiss the gravity of it all. She's stressed too. We need to be understanding. Understanding, I repeated, the word echoing mockingly in my mind. As he went to pick up my clothes, it felt more like he was apologizing for his mother than supporting me. Later, I called Linda, finally allowing the tears I'd been holding back to fall freely. She threw my things out Linda in front of everyone, and Mark, he just took her side. Linda's voice was a fierce comfort. Emily, this is not okay. You know that, right? You can't let her or Mark keep treating you this way. What can I do? He's my husband, I said, feeling utterly defeated. And she's harassing you, Emily. This could have legal consequences for her. Remember that. Linda reminded me. Her words planted a small seed of resolve in me. I wiped my tears, feeling my heart steady. You're right. I need to do something. I can't live like this. Document everything, Linda advised. Texts, incidents, anything. It's not just for a potential case. You need to show Mark how serious this is. As we hung up, a plan began to form in my mind. Maybe Mark couldn't see the toxicity because he's lived with it all his life. Maybe I needed to expose it, to drag it into the light where he couldn't ignore it. That night, I started writing everything down, every incident, every cruel word Sarah had ever thrown at me. It was time for a change, and I was going to be the one to make it happen. I didn't know then just how deep the rot had set in or how hard it would be to carve it out, but I knew one thing for certain. I was done being the victim. Things got worse before they got better. Whispers started small, just quiet murmurs I'd catch as I passed by the neighbors chatting in their yards. But soon, those murmurs grew into full-blown rumors, the kind that make you feel like the walls are closing in. I heard from Sarah that Emily's just after Mark's money. She quit her job as soon as she got him to marry her. It's pretty clear she's just a gold digger. Hearing those words flung around so casually about me hurt more than I'd expected, but I wasn't about to let Sarah's poison spread without a fight. I knew I had to act. I needed concrete evidence that could put an end to all this. So, I called Linda and we hashed out a plan. I'm going to invite Sarah over for tea. I think I can get her to show her true colors. Record everything, I told Linda. Linda's voice crackled over the phone, all business. We need her to admit her motives. So that's what I did. I set up my phone to record audio and invited Sarah over under the guise of clearing the air. When she arrived, her smile was all teeth and no warmth. I led her into the living room where the tea was already laid out and discreetly hit record on my phone. Sarah, I really want to understand why you've been so upset with me, I said. She took a sip of her tea, eyeing me like a cat does a cornered mouse. Emily, it's simple. I think you're not right for my son. You're dragging him down, and frankly, I think you're using him. The casual venom in her voice made my stomach turn. But I needed more. Why would you say that, Sarah? Because it's true. I want what's best for Mark, and that's not you. I've been trying to show him the truth, hoping you'd just leave on your own. Her confession was a clear admission of her intentions. And I knew then that I had the evidence I needed to finally confront Mark and put an end to Sarah's manipulative behavior. It was a harsh awakening, but it gave me what I needed that night. I played the recording for Mark, my heart pounding with anxiety. As his mother's words echoed through the room, Mark's face went pale. But instead of the support and understanding I had desperately hoped for, his next words shattered any remaining trust one had in him. Emily, why would you do this? It's like you're trying to manipulate me against my own mother. His accusation cut like a knife. I hadn't anticipated such a response. Mark, she admitted to trying to break us up. How can you not see what's happening? I pleaded, trying to make him understand the gravity of the situation. But he just shook his head, lost in his denial. I need some air, he muttered, walking out and leaving me alone with the wreckage of our fractured marriage. At that moment, it became painfully clear that he would never truly stand with me. With a heavy heart, I called Linda back. It's time. I want to file for harassment against Sarah, and I think I need to file for separation from Mark. Are you sure? Linda's voice was soft, tinged with sadness for what I was about to do. Yes, it's the only way I can think of to save myself. As I hung up, the weight of my decision settled over me. I was about to change everything, but as I looked around the quiet house, I realized it was already far from the home I had hoped to build. A month later, the courtroom was silent, save for the soft shuffling of papers and the low murmurs of those present. Sitting next to Linda, I felt a mix of nerves and resolve as I watched Sarah across the room. Her face was set in a stubborn mask. Today, everything would come to light, and I clung to the hope that justice would prevail. Ms. Johnson, you may present your evidence. The judge's steady voice echoed slightly in the high-ceilinged room. Linda stood, her presence commanding as she began to lay out the months of harassment. The recorded conversations, the testimonies from neighbors, and even the video of Sarah throwing my belongings out. Each piece of evidence felt like a weight lifting from my shoulders, Sarah's toxic words now serving to free me rather than bind me. Ladies and gentlemen, Linda's voice was firm, her gaze sweeping the room. It's clear that Mrs. Walters' actions were deliberate and harmful, aimed at driving my client to a breaking point. We seek a restraining order and damages for the severe emotional distress caused. Sarah's lawyer tried to portray her as a concerned mother, worried about her son's well-being, but the evidence spoke louder than his words. When Sarah took the stand, her usual confidence seemed to falter under the weight of her own admissions. I just wanted what was best for Mark, she said, her voice cracking slightly. But I could barely muster sympathy as she glanced at me, a mix of defiance and something else. Fear, perhaps. The judge took less time than I expected to make a decision. The court grants Ms. Johnson a restraining order against Mrs. Walters. Furthermore, Mrs. Walters will pay damages for emotional distress. This case is closed. The gavel's fall was like a symphony to my ears. As we left the courthouse, Linda squeezed my shoulder. You did it, Emily. I could only nod, feeling a chapter of my life closing. A painful but necessary end. The aftermath was swift. Mark's stance, or lack thereof, during the trial didn't go unnoticed. Neighbors who had once been friendly grew cold toward him, and whispers followed him in the streets. One evening, he tried to reach out to me, standing awkwardly at my new apartment door. I'm sorry, Emily, he said. I've seen it now. Can we try again? His words hung between us, but my heart had hardened to the possibility of us. No, Mark, it's too late. He nodded, the sadness in his eyes deep, but I turned away, closing the door on what used to be. With Sarah out of the picture and my marriage over, I focused on rebuilding. Linda was my rock, supporting me through the last months of my pregnancy and the move to a new city. I found a new job in marketing, and the excitement of work was a welcome return to my life. Balancing motherhood and a career wasn't easy, but I felt whole, my spirit mending. The day I gave birth to my daughter, I held her and felt an overwhelming sense of relief. She was beautiful, perfect, and mine. As I looked down at her tiny face, I promised her a life free from the shadows that had darkened mine. Welcome to the world, little one. We're going to be just fine. And in that hospital room, holding my daughter, I knew I had not just survived, I had reclaimed my life. I had broken free from the chains of toxicity that had tried to bind me, and now I was finally free. That's the end of our story, folks. Now I have a question for you. Do you think Emily was justified in completely cutting off Mark, or should she have given him a chance to change after his initial support of his mother? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video.